So in this chapter, we'll discuss about repayment. So in repayment, the first concept we have to understand is the difference between principal and interest. So when a bank lends a loan to the borrower, the repayment to be made is the original loan amount plus some interest. So suppose a loan of 1 lakh is sanctioned to a company, and as per the sanction stipulation, it has to be repaid in 1 year. Say the rate of interest is 10%. So interest amount will be 10% of 1 lakh, which works to 10,000. So the borrower has to pay 1,10,000 in total. So here in this example, the loan amount is 1 lakh is known as the principal. The loan amount taken is known as principal, while that additional amount which the borrower has to pay is known as the 10,000 is known as interest. So principal is the loan amount originally lent to the borrower, while interest is the fee bank charges to the borrower. Now interest calculation, there are two major methods. One is simple interest and another is compound interest. Under simple interest method, which you must have studied in your school days, interest is calculated each year as a percentage of the loan. For example, if you borrow 5 lakhs and the rate of interest is 10% for 5 years, then every year for those 5 years, every year you have to pay interest 10% of 5 lakhs. That works to 50,000. So every year the borrower has to pay 50,000. So total interest will be 5 into 50,000. That is 2,50,000. This is separate from the principal, that the 5 lakhs anyway has to be repaid. Apart from that, interest of 50,000 every year is to be made. So the calculation is simply 10% of that principal amount, and this will be same for every year. Remember, every year the borrower has to pay 50,000. There is no difference. But in banks, simple interest is usually not used. Banks use what is known as compound interest. For example, you deposited 1 lakh in a fixed deposit for 3 years, and say the interest rate bank is giving you 6%. So at the end of the first year, what you get interest of 6% on 1 lakh, that is 6,000. Now what is done to this interest of 6,000? It is added back to the principal. Usually we don't go and collect that 6,000. So the banks, what they do, they add back 6,000 to the principal. So now the amount is 1,06,000. Now the interest for the second year is calculated on this amount. Remember, in case of simple interest, even for the second year, the interest is calculated on the original amount of 1 lakh. Whereas in compound interest, it will be 6% of 1,06,000. So now it will be 6,360. And then the amount outstanding at the end of the second year will be 1,06,000 plus 6,360. It will be 1,12,360. Now the interest for the third year will be calculated on this amount. So the total amount outstanding at the end of 3 years will be calculated will be 1,19,102. So if you deposit 1 lakh in a fixed deposit, bearing interest at 6% for 3 years, you will get after 3 years 1,19,102. Now in the above example, if the interest rate was changed to simple interest, then at the end of 3 years, how much you will get? You will get 6% of 1 lakh for 3 years, that is 1,18,000. So if you compare the interest you get by simple interest versus interest you get by compound interest, everything is remaining the same. Principal is same, rate of interest is same, just the calculation method of interest is simple versus compound. Then compound interest will pay you more. Okay, you will get additional interest compared to the same rate of interest. This is due to the compounding effect, because the interest that is accumulated is added back to the principal. So the next calculation of interest is based on a bigger amount. So that's why you get more interest. Now repayment terms are usually stipulated in banks like this. Say a sample repayment could be 60 EMI of 2,351, which means EMI means equated monthly installment, which we'll discuss shortly. So every month the borrower has to make 2,351 every month for the next 60 months. Okay, that is how repayment terms are stipulated in banks. Then there is something called moratorium period. So let us say a sample repayment condition: 72 monthly installments with moratorium of 60 months. Interest to be debited as and when charged. This is usually how repayment conditions are stipulated in banks. The difference between this repayment and the above individual loan repayment is the interest is debited as and when charged. This means, unlike individual loans where repayment is based on EMI, in case of companies, interest is recovered as and when it is charged. Like this will be clear when we see an example shortly. But the other new term here is moratorium. Moratorium is also called holiday period. This is usually given to companies. Okay. For example, if a loan is sanctioned in April, repayment need not start immediately from May. Bank will give some time, some buffer time, say called moratorium, say 6 months. Right? So the loan is availed in April, repayment can start somewhere in October. This time is usually given because companies, when banks give loans to companies, is usually for construction of some facility, some new project. So it takes time for the project to be built and company to sell its goods, get sales amount. So it will take time. So usually banks give moratorium period to companies. Now how much it will give is a discretion of the bank. It varies from bank to bank. Then in repayment, one more concept is ballooning repayment. Sometimes in interviews it is asked what is meant by ballooning repayment. For example, a normal repayment will be like 1,20,000 loan to be repaid in 12 monthly installments. So each installment will be 10,000. That is all the 12 installments will be of equal amount. However, in some cases, banks stipulate ballooning repayment. It's like for the first 4 months, company has to pay 7,000 every month. For the next 3 months, company has to pay 10,000. Then for the next 3 months, company has to pay 12,000. And for the last 2 months, company has to pay 13,000. In this case also, if you add up all the installments, they come up to the same amount, 1,20,000. But it is slowly increasing. Initially, the installment is 7,000 for some months. Then towards the end, it is 13,000. So banks sometimes stipulate such repayment if the company's revenue takes time to build up. Maybe sales will be low initially and gradually pick up. Okay. So then the banks will take this call. Right? They'll make the repayment match according to sales volume. However, this is not done in every case. Okay. This is when company specifically requests and this is a genuine reason. There's proper justification. Then banks will stipulate ballooning repayment. Then there is something called reschedulement. This is also a term that you need to be aware of. So the repayment terms stipulated the terms of sanction. At the time of giving sanction, the bank will stipulate some repayment condition. However, after availing the loan, maybe the conditions might change for the borrower. Maybe his business is not doing well. Right? Then the borrower might request for a change in repayment terms. So originally it was like 60 EMI of 5,000. Say the borrower has paid some 20 EMIs and then he's facing some financial trouble. He's not able to meet 5,000 EMI. Then he'll approach the bank and request for reschedulement, like prolonging the repayment period or reducing the installment amount. That is reschedulement. Right? The reasons usually could be for companies. It could be like unfavorable economic conditions of the industry. The particular industry is not doing well. Okay, for example, in the agriculture sector, many farm loans were rescheduled in the past and even completely waived altogether during times of poor monsoons and natural calamities. So banks do consider reschedulement, but it is only done in some cases where there is proper justification. So we have seen this term EMI many times before. So let us see what EMI is exactly. EMI stands for equated monthly installment. It is a fixed payment amount made by a borrower to a bank at specified date every month. These are used to pay both interest and principal every month. So an example EMI loan repayment will be as follows. We'll also give you a non-EMI loan too, just for the comparison. The point you have to note is, in the non-EMI case, the repayment per month varies. Okay, so it starts at, if you see this example, here we are taking a loan of 1 lakh and we're giving two tables. Okay, one is a non-EMI, the first one is non-EMI, second one is EMI. Observe very carefully that in the case of non-EMI, the repayment is varying. It is initially starting at some 9,166 per month and it's changing to 8,402. However, in the case of EMI, it's the same 8,791.59 every month. This is the key difference of EMI. This is usually given to individual borrowers, not for companies, because individual borrowers usually are salaried persons, so they would like to know exactly how much they need to pay every month so that they can plan their budget easily. Okay, so EMIs are useful in that regard. It will be the repayment amount will be fixed every month. How you calculate EMI? Well, there is a formula, but usually you won't be asked for formula. It's provided just for reference. One question they might ask is roughly what is the EMI? Say for 1 lakh loan and the repayment is 1 year. What is the roughly EMI? So then you have to have a rough idea. Usually it will be around 8,500 to 9,000 in between that, depending on rate of interest. Say if the interest is 6,000, it will be 8,607. If it is 10%, it will be 8,792. You should roughly know the range. Say for 1 lakh loan at rate of 10%, it will be 8,800 something roughly. You have to say. Okay. Don't remember every figure. Just remember any one figure. Say for 10% for 1 lakh loan, the EMI is around 8,800. Just try to get a feel of the total amount you need to pay. The total amount you need to pay is like 8,792 into 12. That is 1,05,499. Whereas the borrowed amount is 1 lakh. So that excess 5,500 is that interest. So just try to get a feel of how much extra amount you need to pay. One trick question usually asked in interviews is, If you deposit 1 lakh in a fixed deposit for 1 year at 10%, at the end of 1 year you get 1 lakh 12,680 compound interest. With the simple interest, of course, you just get 1 lakh 10,000. By the same logic, if you take loan of 1 lakh for 1 year at 10%, the total amount you repay should also be 1 lakh 12,683. That's how they ask in banks interviews. However, we calculate just now in the above example that the amount paid is just 1 lakh 5,499. Is it not a loss for bank? The question is also asked in a different version. If you have 1 lakh spare cash, you have two options. Either put in a bank fixed deposit or lend to a friend. Both cases carry rate of 10% and the period is 1 year. However, as per above calculation, your friend repays you total amount of 1 lakh 5,499, whereas bank gives you 1 lakh 12,683. So you should always prefer bank fixed deposits to any outside parties for giving loans. Is it correct or not? See that above this argument is not correct. You have to understand a fundamental difference between a deposit and a loan. When you put a fixed deposit in a bank, say 1 lakh, you are not withdrawing it for 1 year. So every month interest is calculated on the total loan amount. However, in case of loan, as you can see in this table, the outstanding loans keeps decreasing since every month you are paying off some amount. So interest is calculated on the reduced amount. So therefore, these two cases are fundamentally different and we cannot make such comparisons. Note the key point in this table. In case of deposit, the outstanding at start of each month, in the first column, is increasing. So interest, that is the third column, is also increasing. Therefore, at the end of the year, we get a larger interest amount. On the other hand, in case of loan, the outstanding at the end of each month, that is the first column, is decreasing because some portion of the loan is being paid off as EMI. So interest, that is the third column, is also decreasing. Also note that the total EMI added is 6,600 and not 5,499. This was done deliberately to introduce to the point that there are various methods of EMI calculations, such as flat rate method, reducing balance method. You need not worry about all those. EMI is usually calculated using Excel software. You need not know this. Only if you have some finance background like MBA or commerce, you need to know this. The function in Excel for calculating EMI is PMT. And then you have to enter three variables. Rate, that is the rate of interest. N per, that is number of periods. And PV, that is the loan present value. And the formula you use in Excel is equal to PMT, open bracket, rate, comma, N per, comma, PV, close bracket. And remember that the rate of interest should be monthly rate. If you take monthly repayment, so that is 12% interest is to be taken as 1%. If the number of periods is considered quarterly, then you have to take 12% by 3%. Okay. So the number of periods represent here the number of EMIs. For example, if you have taken a loan of 25 lakhs at 10% interest, repayable in 10 years, say quarterly installment, then in Excel the EMI formula will be PMT 10% by 4, because this is quarterly repayment. You have to take 10% by 4, comma, how many repayment periods? 10 years, but quarterly. So 10 into 4, I think there's a typo here, 20 into 4. You just make that correction, and comma 25 lakhs. So whatever it is, you'll get the answer. So in this chapter, the questions that you need to be aware of is: what's the difference between principal and interest? What's the difference between simple interest and compound interest? If you invest 1 lakh in fixed deposit for 1 year, under which method you will get more interest, simple interest or compound interest? Why? The answer is compound interest. Why? We've seen that. Okay, because the interest gets added to the principal. So the interest for the next period is calculated on a larger amount base. Can you tell the formula for simple interest? Very simple. You might have learned this in high school also, right? PNR by 100, something like that. The principal amount into number of the rate of interest into number of years by 100. Right? That's quite simple. You can tell the formula for compound interest. Explain the repayment clause means 72 monthly installments or moratorium 6 months. We discuss this. Explain the 60 EMI of 2351 each. We discuss this. What is moratorium? Why is moratorium given? What is ballooning repayment? Why is it stipulated? We all discussed all this. What is reschedulement? When is it done? What's the full form of EMI? What's the concept of EMI? Why EMI stipulated for individual borrowers unlike companies? So what is the advantage of EMI for borrowers if EMI is stipulated? EMI terms that we discussed is because of for individual borrowers, because the source of income is salary, which usually is a fixed amount. So having a repayment of EMI, which is an equal amount, they'll be helpful for the individuals to plan their monthly expenses easily. So how is EMI calculated is an optional formula. Only if you are from a finance background, you need to know this. If I take a loan of 1 lakh repayable in 1 year, what is the approximate EMI? We discussed this. It will be around 8,500 to 9,000 depending on the rate of interest. And another question could be, if you deposit 1 lakh in a fixed deposit for 1 year, at the end of 1 year you get 1,10,000. But the same logic, you take a loan of 1 lakh, the total amount you repay is should also be 1,10,000. But you actually pay just 1,05,499 is not a loss for bank. We discussed this also.